which is dedicated to recapitulation, to revitalize the strength in life, to draw the energy, vitality, intelligence, survival and progress from the source. This is the day we give thanks to the source of creation, to the source of human race, to the source of this generation, to the ancestors of our nation, to our forefathers, to our parents. It's a Thanksgiving Day, a very special celebration of this most creative country of the world. Being the most creative country of the world, it has its roots in the process of deriving from the infinite creativity, the source of all creation, the unified field of all the laws of nature. And this day, Thanksgiving Day in America, is more special, particularly today, in the history of all the other days of celebration in the past and future, because this is the day, this is the year, this is the day of the year of the unified field. We have been celebrating this year, the year of the unified field, throughout the world, and now we are in a country which is the product and as such the embodiment of creativity in the world. The expression of creativity in the world is maximum here, and during this year of the unified field, to get the opportunity to celebrate the process of rejuvenation, the process of revitalization, which is in the structure of today's celebration. Thanksgiving is a process of revitalization, is a process of reconstruction, is a process of eliminating all that is unwanted and renewing and imbibing all that is necessary for a rapid progress and fulfillment. So this Thanksgiving during the unified field year of both these together bring to us a very great vitality in intelligence and in strength. And with this we see the onset of the unified field-based civilization. Thanksgiving Day of the year of the unified field gives us a vision of the onset of the unified field-based civilization. And when we analyze the mechanics of thanksgiving and the nature of the unified field, then we find ourselves in the right position of welcoming the unified field-based civilization, a perfect civilization, an ideal civilization for all mankind, for all future. Thanksgiving is bringing to our awareness, and on that basis identifying ourselves with the past. Thanksgiving, starting the thanksgiving to the Creator, God, nature, laws of nature, the state, the self-referral state of infinite possibilities, and then the emergence of specific laws of nature from there, and from there the emergence of the whole universe, unified diversity, emergence from the infinite unified state to unbounded diversified state, and both together the universe. So, identifying ourselves with the past means identifying our mind with the whole state of unified field, the source of creation, and all the creative processes and all the evolutionary forces and mechanics of survival and fulfillment. This identification of our conscious mind with the entire mechanics of creation, survival, evolution, fulfillment. And this is that day when all the people in the country and abroad throughout the world, as the people of this country are spread, there is that one common retreat into the source of life. Everyone's awareness is tracing back to the source. This universal awakening in the self-referral direction of pure existence, pure intelligence, infinite creativity, infinite organizing power of nature, this withdrawal, this inward stroke in the process of drawing more and more energy, identifying ourselves with the source of all energy. The whole world is turned within. This is that fortunate day where the awareness of all mankind is turned within. One day for millions of people at home and abroad, all turning inwards. The whole human race is on the way to deriving maximum creativity, maximum intelligence, and maximum vitality for survival and fulfillment. The whole human race in one performance. And the significance of this day, year and year after, every year, is to create that influence in the whole world, in the whole population of the world, to take the conscious mind to the source of all intelligence, the unified field of all the laws of nature. Let the human race be in tune with the unified field of all the laws of nature, and that will take mankind for a year at least in survival, in existence, in intelligence, in creativity, in achievements, in fulfillment. This yearly operation to create that global phenomenon of identifying our awareness with the unified state of the field, the total potential of natural law. This is the tradition of this country. Tradition bound, all the people of the world are directed to the source. And in this, every member of human race is knowingly or unknowingly, but sure and certain, practically getting on to enliven the field of all creativity, the source of all organizing power of nature. And this being a global phenomenon, every member of human race is deriving maximum from everyone else, drawing upon this infinite creativity from the source of all the laws of nature. Everyone is deriving from everyone else's performance in the same direction. It's a unified performance. And because of its utility in life and in the enriching influence in the world, because of its great utility to life, it's an yearly event, it's an yearly happening. It is embedded in the tradition. It's a festival. It's a festival for the sons and daughters to look to the parents, to grandparents, to great-grandparents, to all the source of one's family tradition, up to the area one's memory could fathom. And it could go on and on and on and on, touching the realms of infinity, the horizon of the unified field of all the laws of nature. And there the awareness rises to fulfillment on that high horizon of beauty and power and intelligence and love, fulfillment. And the children run to parents, and the parents, like the ocean of life, wait for all the rivers from all directions to come and absorb them. It's a great upsurge of life, of intelligence, of existence to connect to the source. Just because the source is infinite, unbounded. And the quest of unbounded, the search for unbounded, is the flow of life. life flows, starting from the unbounded source in the unmanifest unified field of all the laws of nature. And the rivers of life, individual life, flows, life of nations individually, they flow emerging from the unbounded unified field, and they flow on through the waves of space and time to end up in the timeless unbounded again. From the unmanifest unbounded to the unbounded unmanifest, is the flow, the natural flow of the stream of life, from source to goal, which again is the source unbounded. The stream of life, from source to the goal, is the stream from source to source. And this stream from source to source is a big, huge performance of a cosmic self-referral nature. Infinite self-referral, unbounded self-referral. And it is essentially the nature of the self-referral point of the unbounded self-referral. Infinity is self-referral, point is self-referral, infinity referring to the point, and this is what creates the stream of life. Ocean, this is the flow of ocean, it is the flow of life. And it's the flow of life that one experiences on this day, celebrating the Thanksgiving Day. The flow of life unbounded. From infinity to a point it flows, from point to infinity it flows. But it's a flow of the ocean of life which flows within itself. This whole history of life spreads the red carpet for everyone, the whole human race, to come within and follow this pattern of cosmic self-referral performance. The huge cycles, very great huge cycles in space and time, millions of years of Satyuga, Treta, Dwapar, Kali Yuga, very huge cycles. This is the cosmic self-referral nature of the unified field. Cosmic self-referral nature of the unified field. This self-referral performance of natural law, or talking as a whole, the self-referral performance of nature, makes this tradition of running to the source at least on one day in a year. Of course, for the governors of the age of enlightenment, for ministers, it's an all-time running without running, always continuously connected with the source. But for all the world, it's a phenomenon. Thanksgiving Day brings a phenomenon out of 365 phenomenal days. Each day has its own character. This day has the character of self-referral performance, running to parents. This is the point facing the infinity. Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents looking to the children. It's like infinity unbounded, coning down, focusing on the point. So infinity focusing on a point, point diverging on to the infinity unbounded, this mutual relationship of infinity to its own point is what governs the universe. A relationship. This is the day to celebrate relationship. Thanksgiving Day is the day we celebrate relationship. It's the relationship. It's a mutual looking on to one another. It's mutual. This is so beautifully exhibited in the ancient, again the tradition, ancient tradition of wisdom, where this phenomenon of relationship of infinity to its point and of point to its source, infinity. This relationship is in the very first expression of the Veda. Agni mile purohitam. This relationship of infinity to its point, and the relationship of the point to infinity. A looks on to Ga, Ga looks on to A, and Ga looking on to A is indicated by the next expression, Ni, E. And this looking on to the source and bounded A is in reality looking on to the infinite expansion of that. The inward direction is virtually the force for the outward direction. Mi le purohitam. Agnim e le purohitam. So this E, the nature of the point in the inward direction, the direction of A, point faced with infinity, and point facing infinity in the direction of expansion. Both ways, expansion this side, expansion here, and this is the point value. The individual is faced with this situation. He has infinity in inward direction, infinity in the outward direction. Infinity in the inward direction is in the direction of minimizing boundaries and going beyond the finest. And in this direction, infinity facing the diversity, it's maximizing diversity. In the inward direction, minimizing diversity. In the outward direction, maximizing diversity, till one goes beyond the biggest to the infinite, beyond the universe, to the unified state of the observer himself. So in both directions, whether one comes to minimize the individuality and reaches the point state of individuality to appreciate the unboundedness, arrives at Mahato Mahiyan through the mechanics of reaching at Anoraniyan, minimizing and then getting beyond the minutest and maximizing, going beyond the maximum. This is just the search of the source, the search of the source, entering into the knowledge of the objective world, entering into the knowledge of the subjective world, whichever way. But when the way touches the infinite, there is the end of the search, and there is the realization of the self-referral relationship. The self-referral relationship. This situation is depicted in the Vedic literature in Smriti. On this side you have Mato Mahiyan, this side Anuraniyan, and your status is in the middle. You are connected with infinity, you are one with the point of infinity, and here you are fully awake in yourself as a custodian of both diversity and point. This is the situation of a father. On one side he has children running on to him, on one side he has his father to run on to. So the situation of the father today is the situation of a fully awake embodiment of pure enlightenment. Fully awake embodiment of enlightenment. This is the day of relationship. Just by being a father of some, just by being a son of some, the day calls him to be the embodiment of enlightenment. This is the wonder of relationship. This is what relationship does to every generation. This is what relationship does to every generation, absolutely every generation. This is the significance of this day, celebrating the day, the parents' day, the grandparents' day, the great-grandparents' day, the God's day, the Creator's day. All that has been there. For everything we feel, we give thanks. For everything we feel obliged. And in this very simple, in this simplest form of awareness, full of life and emotions, one feels completely alive in oneself. Both ways, outside, inside. On one side, the whole past is there. One side, the future, which are the embodiments of the coming future for every father. The children are the embodiments of coming future, and grandfather and great-grandfather, they sit there as the embodiment of the past. All the glorious past is centered in them. So this is the day where past and future both join to rejoice. The present is fully wide awake. So this is a real day of celebration, complete. This is just like that point of infinity, complete point of infinity. What happens? This point of infinity is so very lively, it's absolutely lively in itself, just because the point as such is on the verge of collapse. And because it is the point of infinity, there is something which makes it not collapse. Even at the verge of collapsing, it has to keep its wits alive. The infinity coming to a point. Now the infinity feels absolutely what? Uncomfortable, because it's on the verge of collapsing. In that uncomfortableness, the alertness is enormous. Enormous alertness. So then that becomes the force for creation. ag. And this ga on the verge of collapsing, but something is there. It doesn't allow it to collapse. And this is because it's the point of infinity. It's the point of infinity. So it can't collapse. It can only burst forth. So the expression of diversity is the collapse of unity on the verge of arriving at a point. When the point begins to have its own point, it just creates infinitely diverse multiplicity. That's how it collapses. Huge, enormous awakening. This is the whole creation emerges from that enormous awakening, the state of full enlightenment, which at once is point and infinity. So this is the day symbolic of total enlightenment, where enormous infinity and point both are fully awake. And as students of enlightenment or experts in the mechanics of enlightenment, we see very clearly how the whole growth of knowledge from diversity to a point of unity, from point of unity to infinity, how that is completely available to us in our conscious awareness during our daily program. So when in our daily program a day comes to rejoice relationship, immediately we know what it means. To celebrate the day of relationship is to celebrate the total range of creativity from infinity to a point. Total range of of creativity. And that we know from the Veda, Richo Akshare. The entire Veda, the whole structure of the laws of nature are in the Akshara, collapse of A into its own point Ka. Akshara. Richo Akshare. Richa, or the laws of nature, in the Ak. The very mode of expressing the collapse of infinity to its own point, the very mode of expression, the very style of pronouncing the basic and ultimate nature of relationship is such, the very mode of describing the relationship, point and infinity, is such that it awakens in our breath, in our speech, in our physiology, and therefore in our psychology, in our behavior. It just expresses the total value of a relationship, infinity and a point. This day, we are absolutely full in rejoicing this Thanksgiving mechanics, Thanksgiving process, and giving thanks to the every stage of our past, getting on to the infinite value of the past, giving thanks there. What we have done in our consciousness, we have enlivened the present, and the total range of the past. Here in our awareness is the whole field of infinite creativity described by Ak, infinity and a point. Infinity and a point coming on to our awareness, and this enlivens our awareness in all those values which are the values of the unified field. Because then we have unified ourselves. Our awareness is unified. The past is unified with the present. And in the same process, the whole future comes to be unified with the present. In this, our awareness comes to that level of performance which is the nature of performance of the unified field on that Planck scale. No space-time boundaries anymore. Unified field rejoices in its own waves. The ocean rejoicing on its own waves. This is relationship. Children go to parents. Waves of relationship. What do? Enliven the heart. Blossom the emotions. Brings enrichment to life. Improve creativity. Great hopes for future. Their blessings go a long way. This whole upsurge of the totality in the individuality is a spontaneous phenomenon. This is the significance of what we say tradition. It's a cultural tradition of the most creative country of the world. It's cultural tradition that leads everyone to go in this fathoming of the source to the extent his intelligence leads him. His relationships, his awareness leaves him. To that extent, he enlivens creativity, and to that extent, he gets revived. To that extent, he is more vital. To that extent, he is more intelligent. To that extent, he is relaxed. And then he plunges into the activity. This is probably the most cherished festival of this country, just because it has this significance in fathoming the unfathomable unified field, the source of all past, present, and future, the source of all the diversified values of creativity, the source of the whole infinite diversity of the universe. The infinity. This is the tradition. And this significance is clear just because the traditional creativity in human intelligence has managed to unfold the real and complete nature of the unified field. By now, the nature of the unified field is so very clear from the approach of modern science, objective approach, and the ancient Vedic science. So the subjective and objective approaches, both ways. This is just the marvel of a relationship. In the self-referral state of infinite intelligence of the unified field, what is there except its relationship with itself? The self-referral state of the unified field is the absolute expression of relationship where he is related to himself. And in this is infinite creativity. The whole universe And this entire mechanics of immortal, eternal relationship, we see very clearly, visually we see in the expression of the very first expression of the Veda, Agni Mile Purohitam. Agni Mile Purohitam. We see Ag in this relationship of A with its own point, Ga, is the total creativity from where emerge all the different streams of the laws of nature. The Rig Veda, the Sam Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Athar Veda, and all the Brahmanas of the Veda. The Veda is the expression of pure knowledge, which in its structure is Lagrangian, containing its own Hamiltonian, the action principle, activity, the custodian of activity in the structure of pure knowledge. Pure knowledge, the Lagrangian, contains within it the custodian of activity. It's not active, but it's the custodian of activity. It's dormant in it, and that is pure knowledge. So the pure knowledge, symbolized by A, complete pure knowledge. A expresses totality, wholeness, Brahman. And for it to fathom its own entirety, it has to be awake at a point, so that when it's awake in its infinity and boundedness, it's awake in its own point also. And this creates relationship of wholeness with its own nature. Here is the Brahman and its own nature. Here is the wholeness, totality, entirety with its own nature. Ag. This is enough of an expression, which is the expression of the absolute relationship, where two are not two, two are one. And in this self-referral state is the activity. And this is what is carried on through all the expressions of nature in the whole universe. So every relationship is from self to self, myself and with my friend. Here is the self of the friend, here is myself, self is related to the self. The entire course of relationship is from self to self. This is the self-referral wonder of the eternal unified field. There is relationship, but of an absolute nature, where there are no two. Infinity related to infinity, immortality related to mortality. And it's so huge and enormous that even it allows mortality to remain somewhere within its range. Infinity related to infinity, so huge, enormous and bounded infinite that it allows even the finite values to hang on to it without disturbing it. This is the relationship, self-referral relationship. All relationships are self-referral. And this lays open that only the unified field, only the self-referral is all that can ever be meant by relationship. Complete self-referral state. And that is the That then is the source of all creation. Source of all creation means source of all relationships between different levels of expression. This is that day where we align our conscious mind with the total potential of natural law, in which we have infinite intelligence, infinite existence, infinite fullness, infinite dynamism, along with infinite silence. All that we can ever say for the world manifest or the unmanifest unified field, all that we can say about diversity or the infinitely silent dynamism of unity, all that we can say about anything can be talked about in terms of relationship, which is the main item of today's celebration. It's a relationship, one word, starting from absolute state of unity, where intelligence and existence and dynamism and silence both have their absolute status, to all possible expressions of theirs, and the whole process of individuation of the infinite status. All can be talked about, understood, or acted upon by that one word, relationship, which is the cherished word of the day which we are celebrating today. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture of the observer himself. Whatever the observer is, one sees in the universe. The observer, reflected upon by the universe, observes his own reflection and celebrates it in terms of something obviously different from himself, the relationship. But this celebration of relationship is the celebration basically of that value which is forever open to itself, eternally open to itself, that absolutely indivisible state of relationship, where infinity is related to infinity, self related to self, non-self related to non-self. Just because there is the truth of existence or intelligence or truth of life, that one is always related to oneself. So these traditions which built up in time, they survive just because their survival is inherent in eternity, immortality, in infinity. And as such, when the individuals identify themselves with that in a very innocent way, then they are life-giving. They prove to be life-giving. They prove to be enriching. They prove to be the source of fulfillment. That is the significance of celebration. Now, just this one word, relationship, originating from the self-referral state, nature of the unified field, self-referral state of the nature of the unified field, emerging from there, this relationship, all possible aspects or facets of this relationship, all possible basic values of relationship, which at one point is absolute unity and at other point spreads infinite diversity. This state of this whole range of relationship, for its most basic values, we find in the whole range of Vedic literature, the Veda, Vedangas, Upangas, Upavedas, Smritis, Itihasa and Puranas. And in the Veda, we have the mantras, the Brahmanas, Aranyakas and Upanishads. This whole thing, the mantra, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishad, this whole thing is the grand Lagrangian and Hamiltonian of the universe, of the totality. Lagrangian and Hamiltonian of the totality means of the unmanifest and manifest both together. Quantum mechanical and classical both together. And that as a living reality in everyone's self. Wherever there is self-referral quality, wherever there is self-referral quality, there is the unified field. There is the total Lagrangian, total Hamiltonian inherent in it. There is the total Veda. The total Veda. When we see the relationship of one aspect of the Vedic literature with the other aspect of the Vedic literature, when we just see the relationship, we only marvel at the entirety of the basic values of relationship that lie between the unified unmanifest reality with the manifest infinite diversity of the universe. Unified unmanifest reality in the unified field state, the total potential of natural law and its diversified expressions in the whole universe. Between these, in the relationship of this with this, unmanifest and manifest, unity and diversity, finite and infinite, point and unboundedness, but in the relationship for their basic values, the fundamentals of relationship are so very exaltedly expressed in the relationships of the different aspects of Vedic literature. The relationship, one relation, and then we understand the categories of relationship in the whole universe. And once we have all these different categories, and once we see at a glance these fundamentals of relationship, and then at a glance, with reference to that, we see in our own self the totalitarian value, the unified value of all relationships in the self, then we find ourselves so very wide awake, capable of behaving in the most excellent manner through all the channels of relationship, and therefore rise to the ability of putting together anything that we want in creation. Once we have the fundamentals of relationship enlivened in our awareness, anything we can relate to anything else, because we are on the switchboard of connecting, we are experts in laying the links between them. All the relation, mastery over all relationships in a most spontaneous manner. And this is mastery over natural law. Considering relationship in this way, what we find is we marvel at the perfect expression of relationship in different aspects of Vedic literature. The Vedic science offers us a marvelous knowledge of pure relationship. Upaveda. Upaveda, the Paurushaya aspect of the Vedic literature, and also when we look into it, also the Veda. So the Vedic literature means apaurushaya literature, that means in terms of the expressions from the language of nature, how the nature speaks to itself, self-referral language of nature. This is one kind of expression which is contained in the mantras and the brahmanas, the Lagrangian and Hamiltonian of the universe. And Hamiltonian at that point is absolutely zero, because it's a self-referral performance. In the self-referral performance, no energy is consumed. On the other hand, it's the reversal of consumption. It's life-giving, it's energy-giving, it's not energy-taking. It's that kind of relationship which only nourishes, which absolutely nourishes, that it doesn't consume energy. And this is that relationship in its absolute value. In this relative value is the relationship of the child and the mother, the son and the father, the child. One just only nourishes. It's not exhausting, it's inspiring. And this theme of explaining the infinite diversity of the universe emerging from the infinite unity, eternal unity. The infinite diversity of the universe emerging from eternal unity. And the relationship of diversity with diversity, the elements of diversity with each other, and the relationship of the diversity with the unity, and the relationship of the constituent elements of the unified field within themselves. All these different levels of relationship we find in the Paurushaya and Apaurushaya language of the Vedic literature. It starts from, it's a very, very interesting day today. It's a very, very interesting today. We are just now on tearing apart all the fabrics of relationship. In the mantra, we have the what? Rishi, Devata and Chandas. Rishi, Devata and Chandas. The observer, the energy, Devata, and the connecting link, the flow, Chandas. So in the mantra, the Rishi, Devata and Chandas, these come up to establish a relationship in a field of self-referral absolute relationship. There are no two in the mantra, but nevertheless, because the upsurge of the mantras, the cognition of the Veda is onto itself its own cognizer, its own cognition, and its own energy. So there is that unified wholeness, and as its constituents, there is the observer, observed, and the observation, Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. And what is happening is, because Rishi, Devata, and Chandas are all compactified in one wholeness of unity, therefore they are not three things. And once they are one, we can imagine the three getting absorbed one into the other. The Rishi with Devata, Devata with Chandas, Chandas with Rishi, all compactified in such a way that three are not three. In this, we see the unmanifest activity, karma, action. And in this, we see the Brahmana, the action, the expression of action, Hamiltonian. Directly we see Hamiltonian in this. And once we have the Hamiltonian, the activity, then we see the actor, the self, in terms of having a body. And then we see it in terms of having the limbs. The angas come out. And the angas. And then the subordinate angas, the upangas. This is all the diverse expressions arising from the absolute state of relationship. Arising from the absolute state of relationship and progressing on to the divergent expressions of the absolute unified state of relationship. So it is the relationship. We are concluding something very nice here. It is the relationship which is the creative power. It is the relationship that creates. It's not that the two things are there and then the relationship springs. It's not that this red flower and yellow flower and they come together. Not that. It is the relationship of, it is the relation, element of relationship that creates these two. That is why Nyaya upholds this element of relationship as one of the foremost element of knowledge, which has that organizing power, which creates infinite diversity from the eternal unity. This diversification or this quantification of the wholeness of reality. Reality quantified. How does it get quantified? By the element of relationship. There, in its unquantified state, in its non-quantified state, it is its own relationship. It is its own observer. It's fully awake within itself. So it is its own observer. Being its own observer, it is its own observation. It's its own relationship. Unity, unified state of relationship. Absolute state of relationship. From this absolute state of relationship come out the karma begins to be, has this Hamiltonian and action principles come out. With that, the 6 angas start. First anga is shiksha, kalp, tirukta. It just quantifies the holistic totality of Veda, wholeness of Veda, the totality of Veda is expressed by A. And its quantification starts with the second letter, Ag. The total infinity has been quantified. The moment it is pure awareness and knows its own point. The infinity being fully awake, being pure awareness, knowing its point, the whole quantification process starts. And here in this is the value of expressed infinity and value of non-expressed infinity. And this we find in the organization of the suktas in the mandala. We just marvel at the perfection of expression of this one value relationship, and how does it create? How does it quantify itself? We have seen in the first mandala, here is the first sukta, expression of fullness, totality, and opposite to it is the unmanifest sukta, unmanifest sukta. So total manifest value with its total unmanifest value, contained within itself but expressed here opposite to it. In this, we have the relationship of totality with its own unmanifest value. Totality manifest, totality unmanifest. This is the absolute state of relationship. There are no two. There are, but yet they come to be two. And in this, the moment manifest fullness having unmanifest fullness in its own structure, the moment these two extremities are put one another, immediately the circle comes up, and the division of power, division of intelligence, division of energy comes from this wholeness unmanifest to this wholeness unmanifest, and then it continues from this unmanifest to again to this manifest. What is happening? The division of the Rishi, Devata and Chandas from the whole holistic value to its relatively less holistic value, till it becomes to unmanifest value. And then the unmanifest value begins to be a little bit more, and comes to be completely full here. So in this, what is displayed in the structure of the mandala? Quantified values of relationship of totality with its own totality. So what has given rise to different devatas and chandas and the rishis? What has given rise to these different values of devata, chandas and rishi? Just the element of relationship. Just the element of relationship is responsible for the creation of this expression. Creation of this expression of the different laws of nature. Laws of nature in its totality, and how they do gain specific values, how the total infinite potential of natural law gets itself expressed in the quantified values. This is brilliantly exposed in the structure of the mandala. Structure of the mandala. And then we find that the mandal, this structure without corner, where this corner, no one can corner you there. At a point, it's most efficient. At a point value, at a point of the point value, it's really real, because in that absolute state of relationship, there are no two, and therefore there is no space and time difference, and therefore that is on that level of Planck scale activity, and that is that level where no energy is consumed in communication, and that is that state of absolute relationship which is energy giving, revitalizing all the time. And it is this point of the point in the whole creation that is the Veda. Its internal structure is mandala. We have that theme of the black holes, event horizon. Mandala is just a significant expression of the event horizon, where the activity is on the periphery, on the circumference, at the point value. And the point value is the most ideal field of the total potential of natural law. The point. The same total potential which is available in the unbounded infinity. And this total potential of natural law seen as containing the total value of relationship, holistic value of relationship, and all the basics of all possible relationships, and not only the basics, all expressions of all possible relationships in the universe, like that. The huge, enormous. So this one element of relationship, breathing its intelligence at a point, gives life to the state of infinity. It's the point that breathes life into infinity. It's infinity, nature of infinity, self-awareness, pure wakefulness that gives life to a point. And that is the eternal state of Veda, the Veda. And its angas. How from the main body of the Veda, the totality, how the different limbs arise. How the whole speech of A, the entire total speech value expressed by A, gets quantified in its own self. Infinity, how it collapses onto a point. How it collapses onto a point, what is the reason it collapses onto a point? Just by its own nature. Just because it is awareness, wakefulness, intelligence. These are all abstract nouns. Awareness. Just because it is awareness, it is aware of its infinity, its awareness of a point, and here is the collapse in its own nature. So where does the collapse take place? Collapse take place? It is the collapse which expresses quantified relationship. It is this collapse which is on the basis of pure awareness. At the basis of pure awareness, it collapses. This is the creation of relationship. How the relationship is created just by awareness collapsing to a point. The point and infinity, the boundary and the unboundedness. This relationship, in its absolute measure, located in the mantras, which is Sanghita, togetherness of Rishi, Devata and Chandas, complete togetherness, Rishi, Devata and Chandas, and then a very beautiful theme of Vedic science spreads its market of diversity on the point of, or on the ground of, these three elements: Rishi, Devata, Chandas. And they are elaborated as Adhyatma, Adidaiva, Adibhuta. Adhyatma, Adidaiva, Adibhuta. Adhyatma, self-referral, the self. This is that level of relationship, absolute. And because the word relationship has two in view, in order to link them, the linking agent is the Devata, the energy, linking aspect. And the linking aspect is dynamic on the basis of the flow of Devata, which is Chandas. So Rishi, the self, the energy is Devata, the flow of energy, the performance of Devata, the activity of the Devata is Chandas. So all the three Rishi, Devata and Chandas, the self, energy and performance, and the flow, this is just in the self-referral state. And this self-referral state is the realization of one's own dynamism in terms of cognition of the Veda. Yo jagaratam richa kamayante, he who is awake, just that quality of wakefulness, who is awake, richa zoom forth onto him. So whenever the awareness comes to a state of self-referral wakefulness, the structure of this self-referral wakefulness in terms of the quantified natural law comes up to be cognized. Quantified natural law. One sukta cognition, one richa cognition, one sukta cognition. Cognition of a specific structure of natural law in terms of sukta is just by the self-referral wakeful quality of pure intelligence. Self-referral wakeful quality of pure intelligence perceives the significant dynamism on the ground of a relationship of the observer and observed in the self of the observed with the process of observation, Rishi, Devata and Chandas. So here is the beginning of a relationship. And then from here, once the source of activity has been uncovered in this way in the mantra, then the dynamism, the Kriya Shakti contained in the Gyan, the dynamism of organizing power contained in the structure of pure knowledge that then is the subject matter of a separate area of the Vedic literature, the Brahmanas. In the Brahmanas, because its activity, all these three values are awake: Rishi, Devata and Chandas. Adhyatma, Adidaiva and Adibhuta. Rishi, Devata, Chandas. Adhyatma, Adidaiva and Adibhuta. They are awake. And once they are awake there, they are specifically elaborated for their basics. Basics. And then we have the three different areas of Vedic literature: Brahmanas, Aranyakas and Upanishads. Upanishads bring out the self-referral value, the Rishi value. The Aranyakas bring out the Devata value, the energy value, quantified energy value. And the beauty is there, or when you go into detail of it, each Devata expressing specific powers, but he is sung in terms of the totality of power. Each Devata exhibiting specific areas of intelligence, but it is expressed in terms of the total intelligence, the total potential of intelligence. Each Devata displaying its own range of specific power and intelligence, but then it's always connected with the total potential of power and intelligence. Like the karma, the performance aspect of it. Each karma, each specific performance in space and time boundaries, each performance is performed with such a skill that the performer, this is very important, that the performer enriches all levels of the three values, Rishi, Devata and Chandas. The Hamiltonian is designed for operation in such a way that the operator, in the end of the operation, is going to be united with the total potential of action power, with infinite dynamism, with lively field of all possibilities, all creativity. Through any performance. This is Vedic performance. Yajna. You perform something in space and time, but the performer, because he is performing through the language of nature, and the language of nature is always a self-referral quantity. Language of nature is always a self-referral quantity and is always a self-referral quality, and therefore the performer performing through the language of nature naturally get his awareness remains in tune with the self-referral quality of the reality. This is Vedic performance. This is what? Experiment of Vedic science. The performance of Vedic science is such, I'll get on to a very, very interesting area. The performance of Vedic science, the practicals of Vedic science, because they are performed through the knowledge of through the language of nature. Just because the language of nature is used in the mechanics of performance, and just because the language of nature is always in tune with the total potential of the unified field, therefore the awareness of the performer invariably gets enlivened in the attunement with the unified field. And by the time that performance is over, the performer is in tune with the cosmic intelligence. It's enormously skillful, and this is so just because it's the language of nature which has expressed in its own language the structure of Hamiltonian. It is the Lagrangian that expresses Hamiltonian, and that is why this miraculous power in the mechanics of Hamiltonian, that whosoever brings his awareness in tune with that style of activity, his awareness becomes lively in the attunement with the total potential of the unified field. This is the practical of Vedic science. Now for a moment, little distraction from this sumptuous field onto this space-time experiments of modern science. Just because the modern science has been exploring from the objective point of view, just because it was going from objective point of view, the whole field of performance, the whole field of activity was getting to finer boundaries. But even if it was getting from grosser to the finer, but because it was not associated with the transcendental, with the unified field, so it always kept on keeping in the relative. So the result of the performance never took the awareness of the experimentist to come to attunement with the unified field. The awareness remains like that. So the grand result of the identification of the mind with the unified field, it never happened. Just because the experiments always were in the field of space-time boundaries. That is the reason why the result of performance, the result of action, never got into that unquantified state of intelligence or energy. It always remained in the quantified states of performance. It never came out to the absolute value of performance, where the performer will draw energy instead of losing energy. In the experiment of Vedic science, it's just the other way, because it's subjective in nature. It's the self, that means the wakefulness of intelligence itself is performing on its own, and the ground of performance is itself. The means of performance, the energy, the devata, is itself. The flow is itself. That is why there is no loss of energy, and that is why any time the conscious mind performs on that level, it draws energy, it becomes more and more vital, more and more intelligent, more and more creative, more and more performing. That's how living life becomes a means of drawing energy. This is how behaving in the field of change one is drawing more and more of immortality. It's on this level that the mechanics are unfolded, and that is the aspect of Brahmanas in the Apaurushaya, and the Paurushaya, Kalpa, which is an aspect of the Angas, Vedangas, and this is Yoga, Karma Mimamsa, and Vedanta in the field of Upangas, and the whole of Ayurveda, which is Upaveda, subordinate Veda. Subordinate Veda, as all other aspects of the Veda. We have seen just now how the Rishi, Devata and Chandas of the mantra play upon themselves and develop that eternal, unbounded measure of relationship within themselves, and then how the Hamiltonian of the Lagrangian of the mantra, how the Hamiltonian is effective in producing energy rather than consuming energy. How the action in that sphere is a total action. It's a total action, unlike the action within boundaries, specific action where the specificity is predominant, not like that, where the unspecific value, immortality, eternity, and boundedness is predominant. And then we see from that relationship within the quantum mechanical field, relationship between the Lagrangian and the Hamiltonian, how it has been beautifully divided into the six angas. Six angas. Why six? Because the Rishi, Devata and Chandas, three of the mantra, and the Aranyak, Upanishad and Brahmanas, three of the Brahmanas. Three of knowledge, three of action. These six give rise to the six angas. These first three angas belong to the knowledge, the other three belong to action. The first three, Shiksha, Kalp and Nirukt. Shiksha, Kalp and Nirukt. Shiksha belongs to Aranya, the action, how A is pronounced, Ag, how the Veda is pronounced, how the syllables are pronounced, the pronunciation, how much mouth opens, how much it closes, where the tongue goes, where the palate moves, and what the throat chokes, and all the huge mechanics, the whole engineering of the pronunciation of the Veda, all the engineering. And this is the vision of the quantum mechanical from the classical view. We see the Veda, Agni Mila Pura, now it comes out. We know the Veda to be the impulse of consciousness. There is the Veda, impulse of consciousness. Impulse of consciousness. But we see it as coming out of the mouth, the speech, the fluctuations of speech. Now this is the classical vision of the quantum mechanical reality. Classical vision of the quantum mechanical reality. Now, in the quantum mechanical reality, we have seen Lagrangian and Hamiltonian, knowledge and action. Knowledge and action. Then, knowledge aspect and action aspect. The action aspect is Vyakaran, Chand and Nirukt. Knowledge aspect knowledge aspect, this Shiksha, Kalp, Nirukt. Kalp and Shiksha goes with Chandas, the flow, how the Veda flows, speech, quantification of speech value, Chandas, this what they call this the flow, and the Devata is dealt with in the Kalpa, and the Rishi Tattva, Rishi, Adhyatma, Rishi, self, dealt with by Nirukta. So Shiksha, Kalp, Nirukt. Shiksha, Kalp, Nirukt. And the action principle predominant are the other three angas, Jyotish, Chand, Vyakaran. Jyotish, Chand, Vyakaran, Chand and Jyotish. Vyakaran will go with this the action principle, diversification. Jyotish also is diversification, the unified space-time transcending value of reality, spreading. It's like this activity from the Planck scale, now spreading into the activity of different time scales, the Vyakaran expanding, and then the Jyotish, it sums up the whole space and time into, it's like the summing up is always done by Vedanta. So Jyotish corresponds with Vedanta, and corresponds means complementary to. Now we are establishing the complementarity between the angas and upangas. Complementarity between the angas and upangas. The complementarity between them is just the expressed value of the complementarity between the knowledge and the Hamiltonian, knowledge and action, Lagrangian and Hamiltonian, knowledge and action, mantra and brahmana, like that. When you see the mantra, then what you see there is all these principles which have been enumerated in the upangas. So upangas, the 6 upangas, Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, Purvamimamsa, Uttarmimamsa, these 6 upangas are seen in the structure of the pure knowledge, the structure of the mantras. So upangas go with the structure of the mantras, and the angas, 6 angas, Vedangas, come with the action principle, with the Brahmanas. Brahmanas bring out the angas, and the mantras, the cognition of the mantra, lays open the six systems. Now these six systems are broad classification of the channels through which knowledge is fathomed in its entirety. They are called Shastra, and those basic principles through which knowledge gets unfolded are those basic principles which govern the field of relationship, the whole universe. How from unity diversity springs, how from diversity one begins to be awake in unity, both ways, expansion and contraction. This emergence and convergence. Both these are handled by the angas and upangas. The knowledge aspect of convergence and divergence handled by the upangas, and the action aspect of divergence and convergence. The action aspect of divergence and convergence handled by the Vedangas. And in this whole theme, only the three values are being handled: Rishi, Devata and Chandas. Adhyatma, Adhidaiva and Adhibhuta. Adhyatma, Adhidaiva and Adhibhuta. And through the whole system, the convergence is onto oneself, divergence is onto the universe, infinitely expanded universe, and infinitely contracted the self. And the awareness which handles both these extremes, the point and infinity, action and pure knowledge, that awareness is smriti, the memory which holds on one aspect the absolute state of relationship, self with the self, and the infinitely expanded, diversified field of relationship, everything with everything else. So this is the total awareness of the entirety of intelligence, entirety of existence, entirety of creativity in its fully awakened state that we have as smriti, memory. When you stand on the door, outside is the veranda, inside is the room, you are aware of both this side and this side. When you have room little bit more predominant, you have the memory of the veranda because it's there already. It's a little bit predominant, and little bit predominant this side or this side. When you are inwardly directed little bit, then you have the memory of the outside. When you are outwardly directed a little bit, you don't lose with the awareness of the inside. And that is that state, Agnimile, E facing towards A, and E facing towards the expanding Veda. Agnimile, Gni and Me. So this inward awareness, this outward awareness, both together give rise to a point which is terribly awake. It has to be terribly awake. One is pulling on this side, the other is pulling on this side. What can happen to any individual? He can only be reduced down to a point. It's a very beautiful analogy. A stream is coming from this side. Suddenly it dashes against a mountain, sudden mountain. Then what it forms is a circle. A whirlwind is formed, coning everything in the area to a point. Stream going this side, and suddenly there is nothing more to go because the point has come, and all the collapsing process, mechanics of collapsing are come down to a stop still, and it reverses back in this side. And reversing back on this side, it creates a point, and the point presses the mountain, tries to break it. This is that Agnim, the hum is created by the collapse of A coming on to a point, ag, ag, and then in this collapse there is, because it's the collapse of awareness, and the point is always aware of the infinity. Infinity has always been aware of the point. So the point looking to infinity, infinity forcing on itself to a point, both cause a whirlpool there, a return. And that return is a compulsory return, but then with half a circle coming this side, it again wants to go this side, press on. And this tendency of the stop and reverse gives rise to a forceful outlet, and here is the start of creation, indicated by E, double E after the point, which is ma, gnimi le purohitam. The very structuring of the order in sequence and expressed in speech is so highly precise expression of the holistic and quantified values of a relationship that forms the fundamental of the whole creation of this stream of laws of nature, from the fountainhead of the unified field of all the laws of nature, and the stream of creation from the streams of the laws of nature. Huge diversity springs. Now we have seen how the relationship between Rishi Devata and Chandas, and relationship of the silent Sanghita within its own self-referral performance, infinite self-referral dynamism of Rishi Devata and Chandas mixing with themselves like that, and thereby creating the Hamiltonian, creating the action principle, and how human awareness performing on that level gains energy, gains vitality, gains immortality, lives all these beautiful values of infinite creativity, all possibilities from there. And then we have seen how these further elaboration of the relationship, a little bit more with the main body, with its angas and with the upangas. This is just the elaboration of the three values, Rishi Devata Chandas, Adhyatma Adidaiva Adibhuta, and further elaboration of Adhyatma Adidaiva is in the Itihasa. Adhyatma is elaborated, the self is elaborated, and the self is so elaborated that in everything one sees the self only, one sees the totality. In the form of a body, one sees the manifestation of the unmanifest, and one sees the unmanifest and manifest as one holistic total reality. This is Itihasa. Seeing a man wandering in the jungle, Lord Rama, Brahman, totality, Rishi, Devata and Chandas embodiment, physiology, psychology, behavior, all in one grand state of unity, wandering in the jungles and playing on the courtyards. This is that pictorial illustration, and this is the methodology of culturing human awareness to see the reality through its transformed values, realize the total potential of relationship, that you are everything, Aham Brahmasmi, the total expression of relationship. Realize that, and then maintain it and be everything. completely at home with everything and with everyone. This is the enlightenment, total awakening of the unified field in its full potential, remaining self-referral even in the midst of multitudes of expressions of its. Just the display of relationship. Ayurveda brings out a beautiful, beautiful theme of explaining the whole universe emerging from this one element of relationship. And Jyotish also on the other side comes out to explain the huge, enormous, total enlightenment and total ignorance, both extreme states of life, total ignorance and total enlightenment and their relationship. Jyotish brings out, Vedanta brings out. Ayurveda brings out, and all the four Upavedas, Dhanurveda. And how does it bring out? Beautifully. Beautifully. The whole structure of Upaveda, that's why it's called Upaveda, subordinate Veda. That means it deals with the expressed value of knowledge, the expressions. Both expressions and non-expressed, we have seen so many times, they are the reality of in two aspects. One is the other thing. The yellow flower is just the colorless sap, and so is the green leaf. Both in their realities are the same one common basis of both. Completely. So, it's very good once the flower is in hand. The relationship of the sap with the yellow petal, and likewise the relationship of the sap with the green this. It's just the relationship. It's a mode of relationship that this becomes green and this becomes yellow. It's a mode of relationship. So what is different between them is the relationship of the sap with this, relationship of the sap with this. Now what is the relationship of sap with the green leaf? The relationship of the sap with green leaf is actually existing in the nature of the sap, where the sap desires, I want to be this. So the relationship is not between the green and the colorless. The relationship is in the self-referral state of the colorless, where the sap within itself, when sap functioning within itself, in its self-referral performance, desires. So the actual relationship of the sap with the leaf is not between the sap and the leaf, but it is between the sap and the sap. So it is from this relationship of the sap with the sap that the relationship of the sap and the leaf comes out. So when we consider the fundamental, then we say sap with the sap is functioning within itself, and this is created, and this is created, and this is created, and this is created. And then someone is here who is here underneath this leaf, and is protected from the sun. He says, "Thank you very much, leaf. Yeah, I'm safe and cool and calm and protected from the scorching sun, and therefore thank you very much." To whom he is thanking, to whom he is relating himself. He is relating himself with the self of the sap. And when he is relating himself with the self of the sap, then the self of the sap is in his memory. Then his awareness is identified with this. So where is the actual relationship of the person and the leaf? Where is the thanksgiving? It's on the level of memory, in the consciousness and its specific modes, where the realization takes place, where the activity takes place. Yes, thank you very much. Some activity takes place. Where is the fundamental of it, the basis of it, the source of it? In the memory. And memory is on what? The consciousness. Memory itself is a fluctuation of consciousness, is a mode of consciousness. And what is consciousness? It's the basis of the fluctuations of the Veda, the laws of nature, fluctuations of consciousness. So wherever there is Veda, there is the real memory. That is the real seat of memory. Wherever the Veda, there is the Smriti. Veda on the universal level, absolute level, totality level. Memory on that totality level, but with reference to individual awareness. Memory is on that level of totality, but reflected upon by the individual consciousness. This is the fine difference between the Veda and the Smriti, the Shruti and Smriti. Smriti is a phenomenon of the individual inception on the universal reality of the unified field. And it's on that level that the unified field becomes identified with the individual field of life. The individual field of life. Identified. Individual field of life means all the activities in space, time, differences, and all that in one stroke, lively on the wakefulness of the total potential of natural law, the unified field. Complete identification. This is Smriti and Shruti relationship. A very, very intimate relationship. Just one is the other, almost the other. One is the other. Almost. But that almost is the reality of the distinction between Rishi Devata and Chandas when they are compactly contained in one Sanghita. Unity and the three. The word even almost is not right there. It's more intimate, more close together than the word almost. It's almost one. Complete unity, just because it is awake within itself. When the universal value of it experiences itself, it's a unified field open to itself. When the individual identification comes on that level, then the individual identification is in terms of all possibilities. This is the extreme fulfilling level of a relationship. That one is a lively field of all possibilities. Absolutely all possibilities lively. And this is made clear, just this, that there is that infinite unified relationship, almost infinite absolutely intimate on a level where Veda is. You know? Now, where do we have Veda? We have the Veda on the level of our own cognition. Consciousness cognizes its own fluctuations within itself in the unified field, self-referral activity, self-referral activity. There, this self-referral activity, because it's the individual who is cognizing, because it is the individual consciousness which is so very fully awake in itself that it can match with that self-referral, eternal and unbounded awareness of the unified field. It can identify itself. It is the individual awareness which can identify itself with the self-referral awareness of the unified field. So, the smriti is on the individual level, and the unified, the smriti, the shruti, Veda is on the unified level. And what identifies itself with the individual awareness. So, wherever there is shruti, the Veda, there is that smriti. The fine difference brought about by two words, apaurushaya and paurushaya. The thing is the same, the Veda, fluctuations, cognized, awareness, identifying itself with it. But just in these two, this is science. This is science. Here is the object of cognition, the fluctuation of the Veda. The subject of cognition is also there, but it is shown as different. The minutest observation, the minutest difference is brought to light there. The shruti and smriti. Content is the same, but in its structure, it has that value of a relationship very well defined, that individual and cosmic. Content is the same, individual and cosmic. The content is absolutely the same. It's like a sun, bright sun shining absolutely the same way all over the pond. And the reflection. Supposing the pond was muddy a few minutes ago, and then the reflection was a little muddy and localized. Reflection was muddy and localized reflection so much and so on. And as the mud is settling down, from moment to moment, the boundary, the sharp boundary of the reflection is gaining more and more brilliance, is gaining more and more brilliance and more brilliance. Now we see the water is settling down, the mud is settling down, the water is becoming purer and purer and purer and purer and purer. A time can be imagined when the reflection is no more indicated by its boundaries. It's the same sun that is shining everywhere. It's the same sun that is shining everywhere. Almost the same sun that is shining everywhere. In that almost state, there is a relationship between the reflection and the sun, because reflection and the sun is almost the same, but nevertheless reflection is that belongs to the individual value. The enormously unbounded sun belongs to the unrestricted value. So the unrestricted and restricted, some little lesha vidya, some little frail remains of ignorance, faint remains of ignorance, or a state of enlightenment. When we say state of enlightenment, we distinguish it from its previous state when it was in a muddle, and now it's no more in a muddle. So there is some kind of comparative value remains, and that makes a difference in the two structures of Shruti and Smriti, and it is that which is responsible for a relationship between Shruti and Smriti, between Veda and the Shruti and the Smriti. Veda, between Veda and Shastra. You know? Veda and Shastras. Shastra what? Shastra means that which governs, that which administers. Shastra, laws. And Veda is the total, the laws. And the Shruti is the total Veda. And with the Veda, now go Brahmanas, Vedangas, Itihasas, Puranas, and then its subordinate, Upaveda, and then this Smriti comes into that range which governs, which is Shastra, which governs. That is all those fundamental mechanics of performance of the laws of nature. Fundamental mechanics of the laws of nature, which create and govern and evolve creation, that connect the unmanifest with the unmanifest through the manifest. This relationship of the unmanifest with its manifestations and through all the relationships with its manifestations to the ultimate unmanifest again. Eventually self-referral. And when we say eventually self-referral, then we have a right to say not only eventually, but even through every stage of arriving at that self-referral state, the relationship is always self-referral, 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 self. Just because everything is the expression of the same reality, which is fully awake. Completely self-referral. So this relationship of one area of Vedic literature with the other area of Vedic literature, this relationship is just to see this study of different aspects of Vedic literature in our today's definition, which has relationship predominant in it. In this context, it is the study of relationship from its self-referral state to through its divergent aspects of relationship, unified relationship, diversified relationship, leading eventually to the original state, to the source. So leading originally to the source means either we say going ahead to the extent that it can't go ahead anymore, or you can say return back and get to the source. So this huge expansion of relationship from its absolute state of unity to its absolute state of diversity, the fundamental values of it which then converge on to its unified value, where the relationship is absolute, self with the self. This whole story is so beautifully expressed in the theme of the Vedic literature, that it's very, very heartening to see that through that sequence it's completely possible to enliven all the values of relationships, relative and absolute, and live the totality, owning everything. This will be a state of life in perfect balance. This is just balance. There is a whole chapter devoted to balance, the chapter of Upaveda. When the Angas and Upangas and Itihasas and Puranas have spread a wide carpet of variety in all fields of Adhyatma, Adideva, Adibhuta, or Rishi, Devata and Chandas, in the whole quantified fields of Rishi, Devata and Chandas, whole quantified fields of Rishi, Devata and Chandas. All these diverse values have been laid open. The skill of perfect enlightenment rejoices in bringing a synthesis of them all and creating a grand wholeness. When all the parts have been spread around, the machines have been opened up and all parts are in all directions, like that, like that. The skill of the mechanics calls for creating a functioning machine without touching the parts separately. This is Vedic science. Parts have been thrown apart and a huge machine is on the ground. One thing is put the parts together, put all the parts together and make the machine run. It's very easy, simple. The other, far-fetched, this is science, exploring all the possible range of possibility, the whole huge, enormous extent of performance, from self-referral performance. You are getting into a very, very tremendously interesting area. From the self-referral performance to the performance of a nature where one would not be concerned with the performers, with the different items. One would only concern oneself with the relationship value, which doesn't touch the items of performance. They don't touch the item, just the relationship, just the relationship, just the relationship. And this is that skill. This is that extreme level of skill that handles the enormous diversity of the universe in a most perfect manner. Galaxies, solar systems, no one touches them. They are all held together by the link that exists between them, the relationship of one with the other, the relationship of one with the other, the relationship of one with the other. This is the marvel of the word relationship. Just the relationship. The example is just that all the parts of the machines are thrown in all directions. And now the relationship. The handling of a relationship. Let me mention this to you. Take it as a passing interest. When Ravan was fighting with Rama, like that. Now his hands were cut apart, but by the time they are cut apart, another grew. Heads were cut apart, but another grew. So irrespective of the elements, the relationship of the body with the head was handled at that time. Doesn't matter where the head goes, but the body has a head. Just because the relationship between the two is still intact, even if the thing is not there, but the relationship. And because it is just the relationship which is eventually responsible and ultimately responsible for the whole creation, the element of relationship is that which is responsible for manifest creation from the unmanifest. If that relationship element of relationship is well mastered, then the relationship will always be there between the 2 parts or 10 parts or 100 parts or what parts. The relationship will always be maintained. And this is a siddhi, one of the powers of nature. It's that basic and important power of nature which rules the universe without touching any element of the universe. Infinite diversity, but the element of relationship is so fully awake, is so eternally awake that it doesn't disallow the disruption of the infinite variety. Change is there, but the total universe continues. This is that mastery of the element of relationship onto itself. Eternity, in spite of all changes. Immortality, in spite of all changes. This is that on the basis of that element of relationship. Once that is mastered, and where is this mastery of relationship? In being self-referral. The ultimate is so simple. Absolute development of the most powerful and invincible force of nature called relationship is so simple. Self-referral. From where? The minister operates. That self-referral, wakefulness. That's awareness. Self-referral, wakefulness. Self-referral, awareness. There is the mastery of the element of relationship. which is so enormously dominating as a continuum of the unified field of all the laws of nature. It's a continuum of the unified field of all the laws of nature. And therefore, continuity or always availability of it is a natural situation at all times, in all places, for everyone, everywhere. That which is so enormous is so easily available in its completeness on such a level of simplest form of human awareness, because that is the content of self-referral value, is the content of self-referral value, the absolute state of relationship, self-referral, absolute self-referral. And this absolute self-referral value is contained throughout the Vedic literature, in every aspect of Vedic literature, but it is so because the Adhyatma, Adidaiva and Adibhuta, the three fundamentals, they are all available to each other as a continuum, always in every point, in every scale of space-time value, in every performance, big or small, in every level, unified or diversified, everywhere that element is always awake, and because its absolute value is in the self-awareness, because its absolute value is in self-awareness, and because self-awareness is the most natural state of human intelligence or awareness, it's available to all. And that is the Smriti level, that is the Shruti level, that is the Vedanga level, that is the Itihasa and Purana level. And when we talk of particularly that value, that machines thrown off for its parts and don't touch the parts and make the machine run, that picture is beautifully portrayed in Upaveda. Upaveda, and Upaveda has a very great teaching of this relationship. I have made clear, I am sure, that this relationship value is present in every aspect of the Vedic literature, and also it is present in the Upaveda. But here in Upaveda we see this knowledge particularly in terms of that example that we threw out, machines, all the limbs far apart, and then create a machine without touching the parts. Ayurveda calls for balance between the doshas, impurities, and impurities. It's just like when the sap is the reality of green and yellow, and then from where the green has come out and the yellow has come. From where? In order to locate this, the Ayurveda says that some superimposed vision comes from the lack of real vision. That example, string and snake. One doesn't see the string, and that is why the snake has come about. Just the ignorance of the reality. That means all the relationships come along only in the absence of the self-referral relationship. Self-referral relationship. Now, how to get back to it? Ayurveda says it sponsors a theme of creating balance, the doshas. It upholds that the vision of diversity is a must for living life. It has to be lived in boundaries. It has to be the infinite continuum has to be dissected and made into a quantified states of its infinity, has to be quantified if it has to be lived. Space-time have to emerge in order to give meaningfulness or status to the unbounded, infinite, space-time transcendent. So, this is going to be a must. Now, what is possible is to develop the remembrance of the original relationship, memory. Memory is possible. And for developing the memory in its purest state, what is necessary is to create balance in all those elements which, when become predominant, create very highly localized vision, localized understanding. So, all those elements which create, which are helpful or which force the individuality into narrow boundaries of individuality and hide the universal expanded awareness, those have to be handled. And there it counts upon the doshas, Vata and Pitta and Kapha. They have their own values, just like Rishi, Devata and Chandas. It's not actually like Rishi, Devata and Chandas. It is just that, but a different name from the relative point of view. Vata and Pitta and Kapha. Now these are the impurities. Now they have to be, in order that the individuality survives. For the individuality to be, this localization or quantification is a must. But what it pleads, Ayurveda pleads, that if it is true, as it is, that the impurities have to be for the individual life to be, quantification of the infinity has to be, in order that the variety is there, so that one lives the infinity or variety, individuality, that one could live universality in the individuality. So individuality has to be. So when the individuality has to be, And what brings out the individuality, what maintains individuality, is the dosha, is some impurity. Therefore, taking impurities to be inevitable for life, Ayurveda sponsors a principle of relationship. It doesn't touch the individuality. It doesn't touch the impurity because it's a must. It doesn't touch the individuality. What it touches is the relationship of bath with pit and kaph and bath. The three lines that make a triangle. It doesn't touch the points. It touches the lines only. It reorganizes, reconstructs the relationship between the two and then calls it balance and talks the ultimate cause of bondage or ignorance to be imbalance. So he divides relationship in two characteristics, balanced and unbalanced. The impurities have to be there because quantification has to be there. Quantification has to be there because it is the nature of the Veda. The mandalas have to be there. Full sukta and nil sukta have to be there. And quantified values of the suktas, natural law, have to be there. All that has to be there. Therefore, impurities have to survive, have to continue. But then, if something has to be there, and one wants to be out of that influence of inevitable impurities, then one doesn't touch the impurities. Let them be there. Handles the relationship. Just the relationship of one part with the other, relationship of the other part with the third relationship, and then you create a machine. It's very difficult to conceive of a machine where parts are still lying apart. But this difficulty is overcome on the level of consciousness, where a mode of consciousness is a part of the machine. Mode of one's own consciousness, another mode, third mode, fourth mode, 10 different modes of one's own consciousness. On the level of consciousness is the value of relationship. Different modes are like the different parts of the machine, but what pervades all these modes is the state of consciousness. So if one handles consciousness, one handles the performance of different things. This brings out a very, very great principle of the life in the age of enlightenment, life in the unified field civilization. One handles one's own consciousness, and in that one has handled all possible relationships outside completely. One handles one's own consciousness. This is the sociology of the civilization of the unified field. One handles one's consciousness and reconstructs all the abnormalities and stupidities of the behavior in the environment, improves the quality of environment just by handling that which connects the different values, which is one's own consciousness. After all, I am connected with this and that and everything and everywhere, with past, present and future, only on the basis of my consciousness. So consciousness is that element. Consciousness is that element which serves as link to connect different materials. And once we handle the linking material, We are handling the relationship. And if we know to handle our own consciousness, we know to handle the absolute state of relationship, which is self-referral relationship. So in realizing the self-referral state of relationship, we are on the absolute ground of relationship, from where all the relationships would be handled by our mere desire. This is science of consciousness. This is science of Veda. Science of knowledge. Science of knowledge. This is science of behavior. This is science of action. Handle yourself, and in that you have gained mastery of all relationships. At will, everything will work for you. It's a very beautiful picture. And all this comes to us with some little deep observation into the structure of balancing principle used in Ayurveda. It balances the three aspects, the Vata, Pitta and Kapha, the three aspects, which are illustrative of Rishi, Devata and Chandas in the Lagrangian of the universe, in the mantra value of the Veda. Just the three basic values of self-referral, fully awakened state of consciousness. Self-referral, fully awakened state of consciousness. This insight into the theme of Ayurveda. Now, this is one aspect of the theme of Ayurveda. This is one aspect. That's why we call it science. It's a Vedic science, because it goes into the whole range of possible depth of reasoning, of reality, of knowledge, of action, organizing power. It goes into such great depth of anything and its environment. Its possible wide range of environment goes into such great depth. So this balancing principle in Ayurveda, to create balance between Vata, Pitta and Kapha, and thereby eliminate the effect of impurities, not impurities. It doesn't touch the impurities. It only creates balance of it. Create balance in the relationship. The other aspect of Ayurveda takes the impurities completely and smashes down to this or this or this or this or this or this, makes powder of everything. Complete powder of everything, of anything, and administers on the level of ignorance. The patient doesn't know what he is eating. This is Ayurveda. Very objective, absolutely so much objective that it doesn't even suggest to the patient. Very objective approach. No psychological maneuvering, absolutely not. And when it comes to psychological maneuvering, absolutely psychological only, nothing to do with the physiology. When it touches physiology, it goes so deep into the fibers of physiology that it goes all completely to the unmanifest, and from there starts to reorganize the structure. So this objective approach of Ayurveda, that it does not. Now, when I come to objective and subjective, I would like to repeat something. This handling the relationship between the two is also an objective approach. You'll see the marvel of this thing. Now we are talking of the consciousness area, but taking the consciousness, which is pure subjectivity, also on the objective level. You have this dosha here, Vata, Pitta and Kapha, Vata, Pitta and Kapha. They are the expressed values from the same unmanifest expressions. Now these, and then what links between them is their own relationship. And the relationship is an abstract kind of thing, unmanifest, abstract. When we are, it's a beautiful thing, when we are putting our awareness between the two objects, between the two parts of the machine, connecting them, then there is the use of two approaches, our subjective and still objective connection which lies between the two. This and this. This is an object, this is an object. Relationship also is an object in that case. Vata and Pitta, their relationship. Pitta and Kapha, their relationship. Ayurveda handles balance between them, handles the relationship between them. The relationship between them, it does something to this, goes up and down and balancing. All this performance is purely on the objective level. When it comes to my adjusting to this, then that becomes subjective. Linkage on the self level, the linkage on the level of smriti, memory, is a subjective phenomenon. Memory is a subjective phenomenon, subjective memory of that or this. Mantra of the Veda is also a subjective phenomenon in as much as it is cognized, but otherwise on its own it's purely objective. On its own it is awake within itself, but on its own, when compared to my cognition, for me it's an object. I see it as this and as this and as this and as this, even though on that level it's my own subjectivity that gives the direction, gives a shape to it and all, but I am a cognizer at that time, and on that sense it is an objectivity. So here in the development of balance between the impurities, between balancing values of the impurities, it's purely an objective approach. The balance between Vata, Pitta and Kapha is brought about very objectively, and because it is brought about very objectively, the administration of administering of this medicine or the treatment is on the level of ignorance. You give to a patient and he takes it. That's not to question why. Purely objective approach to the extent of the patient not knowing anything about it. No trace of subjectivity. And the effect on the objective level, the pain here disappears. Or whatever, the finger here which was cut heals up or whatever. The purely objective. So the perfection of approach is so profound, absolutely abstract, that when the approach is subjective, then it's absolutely subjective. When it's objective, it's absolutely objective. When it takes something of subjectivity, something of objectivity, then it is mixed up, the approach of the gap. So Veda, and that is Shruti and Smriti, and the laws of nature springing from the Shastras, and those laws apply to the individual level in order that the Shruti is satisfied. Those universal laws brought on the individual level, brought on the Shruti level. The partition of knowledge, the demarcation of knowledge for its full unfoldment is so precise that it has its complete theme of objective approach, another complete theme of subjective approach, another complete theme of mixed subjective and objective approach. Just because the entire purpose of knowledge is in enlivening its own organizing power, where subjectivity and objectivity, both in the mixed up state, all the three situations, purely subjective, purely objective, purely mixed up, all these three together structure the totality. Rishi, Devata, Chandas, Adhyatma, Adidaiva, Adibhut. Objective, subjective and mixed up. So, all these approaches, in order that the Lagrangian manifests in the Hamiltonian, in order that the structure of pure knowledge manifests in the structure of organizing power, in order that the point comes out to breathe infinity, in order that the isolation breathes life in unboundedness, boundaries breathe unboundedness, in order that the totality is a living reality of daily life. For this purpose is the requirement for the total knowledge to dawn in the field of individual, which is an expression of total ignorance. This is the story of relationship. A total perspective of all the possible interactions existing between infinity and a point. Totality being lived by the individuality. And once a year, even once a year, one has a time to reflect on this relationship of total knowledge with his individual level of knowledge. Even once a year, even 10, 20 years passing by in this tradition, reminding the totality of knowledge with all the relationship of its parts, reminding year after year, year after year, 10, 20 layers of repetition. Even this celebration of the day of Thanksgiving could make a man fully enlightened. This is this beautiful day which has given us an overcast of the whole situation of knowledge and ignorance relationship. In this what we have seen is very beautiful connectedness of totality with all its parts, connectedness of the unified field of all the laws of nature with the specific branches of the laws of nature, the totality. And when we apply this to all the different fields of life of the individual and the nation, society, we find them all absolutely enlivening. So this celebration of the traditional nature, celebrations of the traditional nature, celebrations of the traditions in the country, those performances, those celebrations have gained the form of traditions just because they are so very useful. They are absolutely so very greatly required remembrances or memories, let's say year after year, that they get into the tradition. Very naturally children say, yes, today is Mother's Day, today is Thanksgiving Day, today is this day. Right from the children up to when they are great grandfathers of the children, they are celebrating. And when this kind of awakening comes, as the knowledge of the universe grows in their awareness and knowledge of themselves grows in their awareness, they see the total significance of all these traditions. And from there we infer that all these traditions in every country, old or new, but things, those celebrations which have taken the form of tradition, they have taken the form of traditions, and year after year they are celebrated because they have their vitality to energize life year after year, season after season. Even if one doesn't have this insight into the mechanics of how the energizing influence is brought about these traditions, by these traditions, even when one doesn't intellectually understand, but the substance of their effect enlivens their emotions, their hearts, their understandings, their mind, buddhi and purusha, and all this we know from our practice of the sutras, all those beautiful sutras where we are performing in ourselves. There, because we are the professional performers of self-referral relationship, we know what it means and how energizing it is and how revitalizing it is, every performance. That it is life-giving, it is energizing. It's a very, very great theme of knowledge imbibed in the traditions of living. Throughout the world, there are traditions of living. So we always respect traditions in order that some day of the year enlivens some aspect of the unified field's nature, some other day, some other aspect of the unified field's nature is enlivened, third festival comes, fourth celebration comes to enliven different levels, different areas of the unified field, and the whole year taken into account, all possible aspects of the unified field come to be enlivened in the whole cycle of the year. All possible aspects of the unified field come to be enlivened in the whole cycle of the year. Same is the case with the whole cycle of month, weeks, days, 24 years. If one begins to analyze how much the intensity of vitality at this hour, at that hour, and that hour, and back to that hour again, one would find the same cycle of rejuvenation. Rest and activity, rest and activity. In the small cycles of events of the days, or in the big cycles of the yugas, of centuries, same self-referral performance of the unified field will be found quantified in different ways, in different forms, in different celebrations. The purpose of life is in living the totality and developing it to being a continuous living reality, even through the cycles of these performances, even not knowing, but the effect in life grows, that it develops fullness. And for all this knowledge today, we certainly give thanks to our tradition of masters, to Gurudev, to the traditions of this country, giving thanks to all the past, starting from God to creation, to the laws of nature, to our friends in the environment, and all the future children to be born. Just give thanks to everyone and be with everyone, completely identified in our awareness, full of life. So thanks to this day of the thanksgiving. Jai Guru Dev. Jai Guru Dev.